Hello, good morning. Um, I know we've got a small group, at least so far. I usually like to make these interactive, so I'll start talking, but if you guys want to jump in and we can make it a little bit more tailored to what you're looking for in your community, that would be great. So when we thought about this session initially, we were talking about kind of a larger community. So for example, I'm in the Washington, D.C. metro area in a suburb called Alexandria, Virginia, and that's sort of the target community that I focus on and spend kind of the majority of our marketing dollars on. But when we're talking about building a community, it doesn't have to be sort of a larger area. A community could be your kid's school or a church or any type of organization that you are in or type of demographic that you're really looking to get into. So when we're thinking about this, I want everyone to be thinking about like, what community are you trying to raise your profile in? So I don't want to necessarily call on people, but if anyone wants to share sort of a group that they're hoping to infiltrate and raise their awareness in, please put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. So for those who just hopped on, I was saying that the community that I focus on is the city of Alexandria, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. So that's sort of where we've focused all of our marketing efforts and where we've become sort of a brand name in our community. And I'll walk through a bit how we've done that. But I also, for example, both of my kids are now at the same private school in our area. And so I'm now trying to make myself more of a brand name in that community as well. So this does not have to be geographic. So think about any type of group. So as I'm talking, be thinking about like what area or what group you're trying to focus on. So some things that we've done, and again, feel free to jump in. I prefer when these are interactive, so feel free to jump in at any time and ask questions. So I think that when you're trying to build a brand, the most important thing is to try to diversify your efforts, right? So some things that have been successful from us on a high level, I'll go through, and then I'll dive into smaller things that you can do to kind of connect and raise awareness. So on like the broader marketing front, we have a mailing that is sort of, when you're thinking about building a brand, you can start thinking about like old school farming, and then we'll go into new ways. So in terms of old school farming, we have a pretty large mailing area that we mail to and have very consistently almost every month for, probably the last 8 to 10 years. But we don't just do a regular postcard. So we try to make it a little bit more engaging to the community. So of course we'll do market stats and properties and things like that, but we're always giving a pretty deep dive on a market report and also things that are happening in the community. So I think when you're thinking about building a brand, you want to be thinking about what's interesting to the people that you're trying to talk to. So again, if you're talking to a geographic area, you're going to think about, what do people who live in Alexandria or in Boston or in Colorado, like what are these people interested in? Or if it's a school, like what are the things, like, are they games? Are they, different charitable groups that are interesting? So for example, this weekend, we have in Alexandria, the sort of the marquee event of the year. So it's a holiday parade. And our team sponsors the kind of kickoff event tomorrow night, which is a Scotch tasting. And so we also walk in the parade. We have a big balloon. The rest of Compass has recently started joining in with us in the parade as well. And that's something that we do a big marketing push around. And we see our clients, we see friends, and everyone takes pictures of us, posts it on their social media. And so like thinking about like, what are the things that people in your community care about? Because the more that people are going to highlight you and promote you, the better. So this is an event that we get a ton of exposure on. And obviously it was intentional because it is one of the biggest weekends in Alexandria. People throw parties, and it's very well attended. So like, that's something that we put money behind, we put our presence behind. And I think that's really important too. Don't just think about, what charity can I support or what event can I support and give money to? That's important. but you want to make sure that you're there and you're connecting and that you're also promoting it on social. So you're sort of like triple dipping, if you will. So again, mailing, but thinking about like, what can you do to stand out and be different? Don't just do a mailing that like is the same that every other realtor does. So like I would be careful about like just taking something off Marketing Center and pushing it out. Like we do custom sizes so that it's not like a normal postcard or a normal flyer. We do different shapes, like a trifold. We do booklets. So we try to mix it up so it stands out and it doesn't kind of look like every other Compass agent or realtor. So that's just kind of broad strokes on mailing, which you all know how to do, but just think about how to be different and really think about connecting with whatever that community is that you're trying to raise awareness in.
Now, I have a question, Allison. I know you
Mhm.
said jump in when you.
Yeah, please do.
Do you use EDDM mailings?
So we used to use EDDM before we came to Compass, which I loved because you can get really granular on picking out like demographics. So like income in different streets and postal codes. So that's really a great thing about EDDM. Currently, we work with a local printer that helps us identify mailing routes. So kind of similarly, so we'll tell him like, okay, we want to send this mailing to people in our mailing area that have been in their house longer than 30 years. And so we'll target that mailing to people that have been in their home for a long time. And then we also identify same target area, how many people have a home valued with a tax assessment, like the house is probably worth at least $2 million. And then we do a targeted mailing to them. So we do some that are kind of general to everybody in our target. It's probably about 12,000 people that we're mailing to. Wow. But then we do sub mailings that are targeted to certain demographics within that same mailing area.
Okay, so that is a lot cheaper than Express Docs the way you do this, correct?
Yeah, it depends. So the printer that we work with, we've worked out a deal because we do mail a lot. So if you are starting to mail a lot, you want to talk to your printing company and try to get a discount. And he's been great at identifying like how to kind of fine tune our list. And like we also exclude any commercial properties, any apartment buildings, which really brought our costs down a lot. So I would just talk to your Compass marketing person and ask if they have recommendations on like local printing shops.
All right, great. Thank you.
Sure. So the other thing that we do that has caused a lot of people, I think has really raised our brand awareness is our website, because we do a lot of local content. So when I went to my son's preschool for the first time, I had multiple people come up to me and be like, oh my God, I know who you are. I follow all your content because this is how I picked out the preschool for my child. Because I have, list of all the preschools in Alexandria broken out by zip code. Same thing for local coffee shops, wine bars, dog parks, swimming pools. So I pretty much thought of like, again, what do people care about who live here, who are in my target market? And how can I produce content for them that's easily searchable and Googleable? So like we rank very highly in our local market for a lot of the lifestyle posts. And so that's kind of a longer play. Like that's not something that's necessarily going to get you business immediately. It's something that over time people start following you and kind of looking to your website and your social media presence for local content that they can trust. And so that's something that we started with the local content and also, writing about things that our clients were asking us about. So if a client asked me a question more than one time, I was writing a blog post about it and putting it on our website. And so now we rank super highly on Google, not just for lifestyle, but also if people search like, real estate in Alexandria, we're ranking very highly because our lifestyle content is so well regarded in our local community. So that's one strategy. And then obviously that ties into social media. So like whatever content we're putting on our blog, like we're tying that into our social presence. I think next year we're going to try to be featuring a lot more local businesses. So that's the other thing you want to think about is like with everything you're doing, how can you get more bang for your buck, right? How can you get more exposure? So, making sure you're tagging other businesses, profiling them so that they're sharing it. And then, it's going out to their followers as well. And then when a local business is promoting you, it gives their followers, it gives you credibility with their followers immediately. So we do a lot of like tagging of local businesses when I go out to eat or grab a drink or get coffee. Like I'm always tagging the local businesses, even if it's just a story and they're resharing, and it just kind of continues to grow. So again, like as you're thinking about these various strategies, I want you to be really thoughtful about, again, like I said at the beginning, the community that you're trying to reach. So my strategy for Alexandria is going to be really different from the strategy that I have for my kids' school, right? So I'm not going to be writing blog content about my kids' school, but what I'm going to be doing is showing up to every birthday party, every, class event, all of these things, and being really present and showing up and volunteering and doing the work. So also be thinking about your in-person presence. How can you see and be seen? And not just see and be seen, but how can you be connecting with as many people as you can within the community that you're trying to elevate in? Because people connect with other people, and especially if you're being helpful and volunteering or bringing something to the table, people are naturally going to bring your name up and connect you with others. So for example, I went to a listing appointment earlier this morning, and she was like, "Oh, I heard your kids go to the school across the street." And I was like, "Yeah, actually, the Blanchards 2 doors down, they had the junior kindergarten party earlier this year. They're wonderful." And she was like, "Yep, they're the ones who brought your name up." And so that was because I went to a party that honestly, I didn't feel like going to, but I went, and, it all is a ripple effect. So making sure you're showing up and doing the work.
Allison, can I
Yep.
ask another question?
Sure.
Your website, who did you hire to do yours? I haven't looked it up or anything.
Yep.
We're
I'll put
often
it in
inundated
the chat.
by different vendors.
Yeah, so I use Artifact Digital out of Canada. And they've been wonderful. They're very hands-on. They specialize in real estate websites, but they're not a templated company. So it's not like you're going to get the same template as everyone else. You're going to really build a custom site.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have your own website yet, I would definitely think about making sure that you own the site, that you're not like renting the site. A lot of these bigger companies, you're basically renting it. So you don't want to build up SEO, because if you left that company, all of your hard work would go away. So just be cognizant of that when you're interviewing web companies. That's really important. So you don't want to put a lot of work into SEO and then switch website providers and it all goes away.
Interesting.
And then make sure that there's a blog section so that you can be writing articles and starting to rank. And honestly, the easiest stuff to rank for is the easiest stuff to rate. Best coffee shops in whatever your city is. Best breakfast, best brunch, best bottomless brunch. These are, best hamburger, ice cream shops. It's so easy because you're really just like listing places that you go to all the time. And, you can just write like a sentence or two about them and then link to their website. And then share it to your social and tag all the places. And it takes off pretty quickly. So like we rank higher than a lot of like local media sites on a lot of these things. So I was just getting ready to tell sort of a story about an agent who also works in my market. So she's not focused on all of Alexandria. She's focused on Old Town, which is sort of the downtown area, but only one quadrant. So she's hyper focused, and actually not even the whole quadrant. She's probably focused on like an maybe 12 block little square, and she calls it her nest, the nest. She goes, "I don't like to leave the nest. I don't like to leave the nest." And she really hyper focuses on this community, or not in community, just like little group of streets. And she identified a restaurant in that area that, the type of people who live in that little section of town like to go to. And she had a standing reservation there every Friday night. and she would, entertain different clients there every Friday night. It's sort of a C and B scene restaurant. And it was very popular with her friend group and clientele. She's an older agent who's, sort of a role model to me when I was coming up. And she would just host people at this table, and people knew to expect her. Like, they would see her every Friday, and she would send bottles of wine and champagne and cocktails over to tables of everyone. And she really, I mean, she still to this day dominates this little section of town. And so she mails, she started on social. I wouldn't say that's her best thing, but she really walks those streets and dines there, and is like, if you think about those streets, like, she's probably doing half the business there. So again, like, see and be seen is important too. It's not all just marketing. I think being present is a really good way. And again, like I said before, like, trying to connect, like, identify who are the people who are already name brands in whatever market or group that you're trying to focus on. Like, identify who those people are, and not in a creepy way. Like, don't try to like be like, oh, I'm gonna be friends with them, because that's, you want to be genuine, but be cognizant of those people. And I think if you can genuinely connect with other people who are sort of connected in that group, that's going to pay you really fast dividends, probably a lot quicker than a marketing campaign.
Right.
Any questions so far? No? Okay. I mean, really, I think that's kind of the main thing. I think I would say, if you're kind of thinking through, is one, identify the group, right? Identify who you're trying to focus on, and maybe it's more than one, but kind of write them out. If there's 3 groups that you're really trying to infiltrate, like, think about what those are. Second, think about, where do they go? Where are they? So, and then write down a few places that they're frequenting. What's important to them? And you want to produce content that's important to those things. So whether that's a community event, whether it's some legislation that might be getting passed, like today, the listing appointment that I was on, they were talking about how this main road was going to be getting a bike lane and blah, 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 whatever. So like, there's stuff like that that's going on, that's local news, that, the people who are right there really are going to care about. And again, you can, everything you send out doesn't have to be to your whole list. Think about what's important to different groups and really target. You want to have stuff that you're sending out broadly to everybody, but you also want to be thinking about, like, how can I connect more immediately? And I think that's really, like, just getting super intentional about what you're talking about and who you're talking about it. Whether that's mailing, whether that's website, whether that's social media, whether it's an event you're hosting. I think we didn't talk too much about that, but I think hosting events, which can be broad scale, like we're sponsoring that big event this weekend, which is great, but, also be thinking about to the small scale, like always having that dinner reservation every Friday or whatever. Be consistent and think about how you can quickly elevate your brand in front of a lot of people. So you can also do, for example, one year around this event that's happening this weekend, this parade, we did a geofence ad. So for example, if you're not familiar with geofencing, it's a digital ad that you can do that's like a physical boundary. So imagine drawing a fence around a location. Okay. So we basically drew a fence around the parade route and said, we want to do an ad to anyone who's in this location. And so we had, I can't even remember exactly what the ad said, because this was a couple of years ago. I think it was the year before COVID. But it was basically, here's your list of things to do. Again, it was not real estate. It was, here's your list of things to do Scottish Walk weekend. And it was like, again, best restaurants, best coffee shops, parks, because we get a lot of tourists come in for it. Strangely enough, I'm still not exactly sure why, but a lot of tourists come in for it, and it is like the event for residents. So we kind of just had like a things to do ad. And then again, at the bottom of pretty much any lifestyle content, we are encouraging people to sign up for our weekly newsletter, which has always lifestyle content, but always real estate and always talks about, you know, how great we are without being braggy. So yeah, I think again, identify your target. What do they care about? Where are they? And just go from there. And that can look so different for very different groups and everyone's personality. So some people are going to be really natural at creating content, whereas other people are going to be really natural about getting their hands dirty and showing up to everything they can at a school or in a neighborhood, or like walking their dog on every single street every day and saying hi to the neighbors and, hey, can I help you like plant that tree that you're working on or whatever. So again, just be present, be helpful. And I think that's really the bulk of it, is kind of like throw the spaghetti at the wall. But once you've done that, see what's sticking and then sort of like dive in super deep.
How many people do you have on your team?
We are at 10 people right now.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a large team. And so you work on this collectively.
So I work with my mom. We're the lead agents on the team. The two of us pretty much are creating most of the content. We have one other person on our team that if we identify something, she's, you know, she'll put it together. So if I say like, oh, we should have a list of holiday events happening in Alexandria, she'll do the research and put it together. But when we started our website, I pretty much did like 98% of the content. Now I'm doing less just because we're already ranking. So I'm not writing as much of it as I used to.
Hey, Allison, thank you for hosting this. Quick question in terms of when you were doing the content, how much time were you spending on like writing things, or, you know, really more so the more comprehensive content that you're putting out there, like blog posts, stuff like that?
So when I started, my goal was to write 2 blogs per week. And so that was what I did very consistently. Some weeks I had more than that, but I basically had like a running document of ideas that I would just kind of pull from. So again, like if I had a question more than 2 times, it would go on the list. And then I started thinking about, this is kind of shifting away from the brand building, but I think it's important tip anyways. I really use that in my business from a process standpoint now. So I've got tons of articles that I've written as like explainer pieces to my clients that I try to send to them to read before we're at the point in the process where it's going to become an issue. The benefit, there's a few benefits. One is that obviously the client's a little bit more prepared. 2, they know that you're not directing what you're saying to them specifically, so they take less offense. Because it's sort of, you know, I've written this, wrote this 2 years ago. I'm saying this to every client. Like, they're not like, oh God, my house is a mess. Like I've got to, you know, I've got to do these things. So it feels, I think, a little bit less targeted. So maybe a little bit more trustworthy and less offensive. And honestly, the best benefit for me is that it saves so much time, because the phone's not ringing as much from clients. I'm not getting as many emails. One of my favorite articles that I wrote was actually, I have an abbreviated version of it on the blog, but I have a longer, more detailed version that I send to clients. And it's because I was at a conference in Miami, like maybe 10 years ago. And the client was like, can we talk about an offer at like 9:30 p.m. tonight? And I was like, oh, I really did not, I did not want to do that. I had a dinner I was supposed to go to. So I was like, how can I write like the most thorough email that I can that would like answer any questions she might have tonight, and then I can chat with her in the morning. So I just like, you know, I just banged out like any question that I thought could possibly come up, and sent it to her. And she was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've got this like great understanding of it. Again, I probably wrote this like 10 years ago. I've been tweaking it every year when there's changes to the contract, or again, questions that come up from clients. But my sister is buying a house in Connecticut right now, and she had a question. She's been asking me questions the whole time. And I was like, finally, I was like, Amanda, I'm sending you an email. Please read it. This is what I send to my clients. She was like, oh my God, this is so helpful. And so I think it just ends up saving so much time because I'm getting so many fewer questions. So again, I just had a running document that if I was getting a lot of questions, it would go on the list. And when I had time, I would just, you know, write the article. and things moved up and down the list based on priority. So I think I had it segmented, like, what are the questions that I want to answer for my clients to like save time, make the process better? What are the things that I think are interesting going on in the community that I think my clients might be interested in and might be like, oh, thank you so much for telling me that this event's going on. And then I also thought about like, what's going to get me to rank on Google. And those are really like the list roundups. And that really, again, like I can't tell you how many people have become clients or friends because they're like, oh, when I moved to the area, I just like, anytime I had a question about something, because I saw your article on this, I just kept going to your website to check on whatever. And so like, that's been nice from like a brand standpoint, but also like I've developed friendships from that too. So it's been great. I think the blog is like one of my favorite things that I've done sort of, from a brand standpoint, but just from like a personal satisfaction standpoint too.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Awesome.
Sure.
Okay, that's Tucker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so like, I kind of feel like I've gotten a pretty good focus on, geographic and demographic kind of places that I want to hit
Mhm.
out here in Colorado. And my biggest struggle is, I think in my newsletters that it's a big dump, right? Of, the skiing and outdoor community mixed with people interested in real estate, mixed with issues that are going on, mixed with fun stuff that's happening in the community. And I feel like it might be too noisy.
Yeah.
And then I also feel like I'm a little bit hesitant and I don't end up posting similar or the same thing on social media
Mhm.
just because I feel like, oh, like they've seen it in my newsletter, they're gonna think I'm being redundant.
Yeah. So I've got a couple comments on that in a few directions.
Okay.
So,
I know it's a very broad.
yeah, no, I think when we first started our website and sort of the accompanying newsletter, I did have two separate newsletters, and one was more real estate focused, and one was just like blog, lifestyle, whatever. And I think that worked, and I think that's totally one way that you can go. I think if you're going to do that though, you really need to have a crossover option for both, you know? Are you talking email newsletter or like a mailer?
Email. I'm
Okay.
still so new that mailers are pricey.
Okay. Yeah. So I like to have both in ours because some people are there for some people are there for separate things and some are there for both of the content. And it just got, over time, it got too complicated for me to maintain two different things. And so for me, it was just easier to keep it all in one. But I gotta tell you, like, I look at our open rates are really high for the industry. And I think people enjoy seeing, like, again, when you're talking about real estate, like keep it interesting. So put like a featured house, even if it's not your listing, that's like really sexy and fun that people are like, ooh, I want to see inside that house. Even if it's not in your market, even if it's like featuring another Compass listing around the country, people love stuff like that. And I think people do want to know what's going on. So you don't want to like overdo it and have like everything ever that's happening. But if you want to keep the newsletter more streamlined, like one thing you could do if you do have a blog, or you could create, even like, I'm just thinking as I'm talking, could even create like a flip book of like a bunch of lifestyle content that's in the flip book or in the blog, and just
Very
link
cool.
in the newsletter to like, my favorite winter events in wherever you are in Colorado, like happening now, and just click here and then it goes to all of them. So if you want to keep like it less noisy, I think that would be a good way to do it. But I do think it's important to have real estate and lifestyle content, because really we're selling both, right? We're not just selling houses, we're selling community.
Absolutely.
And you want to keep people engaged who aren't about to buy or sell a house. So like, I want to keep my past clients and my friends who are not thinking about moving opening my newsletter. And I do that by having, things they care about. Again, when I'm thinking about my sphere, I'm thinking a little bit different than my broader community, but I always want stuff I'm sending out to the broader community to also appeal to my sphere. So I do a lot of like kids events, things like that, like best indoor kids activities in the winter. So I think I think doing both is important. You asked something else at the end.
Was more of the anxiety of being redundant
Oh,
in my
yeah, yeah.
social media posts, because
Yeah.
I don't, I'm trying to get like at least 2 posts a week and stories every day.
Yep.
And I don't post what's on my newsletter, and I have
Yeah.
so much good content in there. And I'm just like, I'm afraid people are like, come on, dude, like I've seen this before,
So-
or the other way around.
A couple comments about that. One, some people are gonna, like, your most loyal people are gonna see it on both, right? But like, we think people are paying more attention to us than they are.
Hmm.
So not everything you post on social media is gonna be seen by everyone on social media, and not everyone's gonna open your newsletter. So you know what, again, for me, like, I've been doing this long enough that I'm like, I want to minimize the time and effort I'm spending on this and maximize my reach. And so to do that, I'm using a lot of, not all the same content, but the best content from both, I'm cross-pollinating.
Okay.
And so, like, for example, every blog that goes on our website does not make our newsletter and does not make our social. Some of them are better for social, some are better for newsletters, but the best ones go on both.
Okay.
Especially the stuff that you think is going to be most relevant to the people that are following. Like, you have to think about it if you have the same audience. So like, my audience is not necessarily the same on both. There's a lot of crossover, but I've got way more people on my email newsletter list than I do on social.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone finds it helpful, but I bumped my newsletter up to be bi-weekly, so once every 2 weeks, and I spend about 4 hours a week working on it. But I would say once a week, someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I loved X, Y, and Z in your newsletter." So like,
Right.
yeah, huge payoff. So,
And
and
like,
it's
if you
totally
can pay
customized.
attention-
Like, it's not, yeah.
Exactly. I think customizing stuff's so important. Like, step one is be consistent. So get out what you can get out, right? Like, push out whatever you can. However, to really connect with people, you've got to make it sound like you. I think that's really important. It has to sound like you. It can't sound like someone's doing it for you. If you, like, we have a virtual marketing person that puts together a lot of stuff, but pretty much everything is going to be in my voice. Like, I'm going to rewrite stuff, or I will write it and send it to them to put together. Sounding like you and feeling like you is kind of the key. Like, make sure that the content you're putting out, both on social and on an email newsletter and in a mailing, it has to feel like you, and it has to be appropriate and feel like the people that you're targeting. So again, like, think about when you're creating content, this is any kind of content, I don't care what it is. Think about like your target ideal client. Like, who, if you could sell like every house to like the same type of person, like, who would that be? And try to write to them. Okay. So like, if you are like, I really want, someone might really want like a first-time home buyer who likes outdoorsy activities and has a job in tech. Someone else might want like I really want move up buyers who have, like, my goal is like, I want someone who's selling an $1.2 million house and buying like a 2.4 house and has kids at my kids' school. Like that's who I'm talking to.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yep. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Just really keeping in mind that targeted audience and that voice, using the voice that would connect to them and their lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think so, like, again, I work with my mom, and so my mom puts the mailers really in her voice for the most part, because the people really looking at the mailers are typically more of like her demographic. And so people are constantly like, oh my gosh, I hold on to these. And like, we get listings because people are like, I've been holding on to these newsletters and I read everything and I do everything in my house that you tell me to do. And like, they love it, whereas I'm like, here's where to go out to dinner. Here's where to take your kids. Like, so.
That's great.
All right. Looks like we're a little past time, but if anyone has any other questions, feel free to email me or message me on social, I'm happy to chat. I'll just put my stuff in the chat. Okay. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Always happy to help, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mhm.